Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Venezuela is facing an economic crisis. Critics widely blame the country's president, its socialist leader, Nicolas Maduro. He declared a state of emergency this weekend, and that gives him even more power. Caitlin Burke is on the story.
Venezuela is a country rich in natural resources, the fifth largest exporter of oil in the world. But despite its assets, the economy is disintegrating. With basic necessities scarce and inflation skyrocketing, some reports suggest it could go as high as 700%.
The people of Venezuela are suffering from violence, a world record of daily murders and random kidnappings. They are suffering permanent shortages of food, basic goods, most medicines and medical care. Water is scarce and no longer guarantees the former sanitary standards. Even electricity is subject to frequent rationing.
Many blame the economic collapse on the country's socialist leader, President Nicolas Maduro. The people of Venezuela calling for him to be ousted before the end of his term. But in an effort to hold on to power, he's declared a state of emergency.
I constitutionally decided to adopt a new emergency decree, which gives me enough power to defeat the coup, the economic war, to stabilize our country socially, and to face all the international and national threats that we have now against our country.
This decree expands on Maduro's previously declared economic state of emergency from last January. It's still unclear, however, what the president intends to use his special powers for.
Whatever the solution of the crisis will be, the people of Venezuela need their institutions to address the security situation and to put the economy back on track.
The people of Venezuela say they're tired of food and energy shortages, and they're taking their protests to the streets.
I'm tired of this tragedy and everything. I want him to leave quietly and peacefully, that he leave Venezuela to us, that we have people to solve the problems.
What we want is to remove this yoke off of us to be able to live well. I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried for my children, that they are going to have a destroyed country.
The situation is so severe, the New York Times reports it's even making it hard for doctors to keep newborn babies alive due to a lack of drugs in the country's collapsing hospitals. Critics warn the crisis in Venezuela is just the latest example of the failures of socialism. Thomas Lifson of The American Thinker writing, quote, "There's a real possibility of starvation, horrendous political violence, and mass suffering in a nation that holds the world's largest oil reserves. Socialism's toxicity has never been more tellingly demonstrated than in Venezuela." Brett Stevens of the Wall Street Journal brings the point home to our own soil, saying Venezuela is a clear lesson for people supporting socialist Bernie Sanders. Bernie's way paves the same road to serfdom that socialism does everywhere. Take the time to tell your kids what socialism is and does before they too feel the burn. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
A top aide to the president will not testify to Congress about his tactics for selling the Iran nuclear agreement to the public. Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes told the New York Times Magazine he created a, quote, echo chamber to build public support for the deal. House Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz says Rhodes should explain those remarks in more detail. An attorney for the White House says forcing Rhodes to testify would interfere with the president's ability to receive candid advice. In what's being celebrated as a big win for the Little Sisters of the Poor, the Supreme Court unanimously decided the nuns and other plaintiffs in the case will be protected from having to provide birth control and other abortion-inducing drugs on their health insurance or paying massive fines. The High Court accepted the admission from the government it can modify the policy to be more respectful of religious liberty. The Little Sisters are overjoyed and thanking God for the decision.
They've been so happy, so joyous. They've been praying for the Supreme Court and for this case for a long time. One of our little sisters was actually, she told us in the middle of a prayer about this case when we called to give her the news. So they're overjoyed that the Supreme Court was able to give them the unanimous decision that they've been praying for, and this important reminder for all Americans that this is something that doesn't have to be divisive. The Supreme Court didn't disagree about it. We don't have to disagree about it. This is a win-win decision that everybody should be able to get behind.
The case will be sent back to the lower courts with recommendations on how the government can protect the Little Sisters' religious beliefs while still offering birth control to anyone who wants it. Australian police are carrying out raids across Melbourne after arresting 5 men who plan to travel to Syria to fight for the Islamic State. The operation netted another suspect who was planning an attack on Australian soil. Police arrested an 18-year-old who'd been studying possible targets and trying to buy a firearm. He's been charged with planning a terror attack and seeking to join ISIS in Syria. So far, at least 100 people have left Australia to wage jihad with the Islamic State. Congress is upgrading the role religious freedom plays in U.S. foreign policy. The Frank Wolf Religious Freedom Act updates a 1998 law sponsored by the former Virginia congressman. The original law established a framework to investigate religious freedom abuses, names the world's worst violators, and suggests courses of action. The new bill will target militant groups like Nigeria's Boko Haram and the Islamic State. The House passed the bill Monday, and now it moves on to the U.S. Senate. Members of a Chinese church are happy to have their imprisoned pastor back home. Pastor Zheng Zhuzhao received a hero's welcome after spending 240 days in jail. This cell phone video of the celebration comes courtesy of China Aide. Zhang spoke out against a campaign against churches by the provincial government in Zhejiang province. Authorities there have destroyed several churches and torn down hundreds of crosses from church buildings. CBN Superbook programs are changing lives around the world, including right here in America. Gary Lane explains how a Chinese church in our own backyard is using Superbook to introduce people to Christ.
We love Superbook!
Children from Family Bible Church in Virginia Beach can't wait to go to church on Sundays. Besides learning about God, they're also excited to meet their new friends, Gizmo, Chris, and Joy. Most members of the congregation are Chinese. Renelle Roberts is the Sunday school teacher. She explains Superbook brought many kids to her class and offers more than just stories.
Animation connects with these children like no other medium can. They're able to really grasp biblical truths when they can connect with Chris and Joy and Gizmo week after week after week, and they're learning principles that we teach through, of course, the Bible, but they're able to really make it come to life in their minds when they see it on Superbook.
Bon Wang is the senior pastor of the church. He was very much surprised to see how much the children learned from Superbook.
Today in my Sunday school class, I was asking some questions about the resurrection, and they're able to give me some really good answers. And when I asked them, where you learn these things from? And they said it's from Superbook. So I know that Superbook has made an impression on them.
Superbook also brought the kids' parents to church.
Superbook also teaches me a lot of knowledge in the Bible that my child shared with me. It encourages me to go to church with my family to know the Word of God deeper and deeper.
Joanne Chung was baptized last year. She says her life changed after she viewed Superbook episodes with her son. Her husband is not a Christian, and she prays Superbook will also touch his heart.
Every time I watch it, I feel Superbook teaches me and my son something new about God. As a new believer in Christ, I will continue to seek after God, and at the same time, I won't give up on praying for my husband's faith. I am certain the Holy Spirit will touch him through Superbook too.
Parents and teachers at Family Bible Church are also excited about Superbook Academy. They're also looking forward to using the online curriculum to discover more biblical truths and grow stronger in their walk with the Lord. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Superbook events are also taking place in other countries. This spring, Superbook teams visited children in 3 poor villages in Bulgaria. All of the events were full of families who saw 2 Superbook episodes, played Bible games, and received gifts. One village, which is known for its high rate of child trafficking, had 400 people taking part. People there told CBN it was the first public screening they had seen in more than 20 years. Up next, the never-ending nightmare of the Yazidi people, like these children who witnessed decapitations. Meet the nun who's helping these victims of ISIS to heal. The story is coming up right after this. The Yazidi people have suffered horribly at the hands of ISIS. Some managed to escape and make it to Europe, But the Europeans welcomed in some of the Yazidis' torturers, disguised as refugees, and now their nightmare has returned. Dale Hurd has the story from Germany, and we warn you, this story does contain disturbing content.
You've no doubt heard of the terrible suffering of the Yazidi people at the hands of ISIS. The rapes, the murders. The fortunate ones made it to Europe, where they thought they had escaped their Muslim torturers to find peace and safety. But after our interviews in Germany with several Yazidi victims, it became clear that for all of them, a normal life is probably never coming back. They're still tortured by what was done to them and what they saw. Ayas was just 15 when he was told to convert to Islam and join ISIS or die.
There were big ovens made of mud. The ovens were made for baking bread, but big enough to hold a person. ISIS forced me and the other young men to push and throw elderly people into the ovens, and they burned them. One of my friends was forced to put one of the old people in the oven and heard his voice and knew it was his own grandfather.
Aide was taken from her husband and made a sex slave, but she tried to protect the young pre-teenage girls who were also being raped.
We were like a flock of sheep without a shepherd. One day, the guard grabbed a 9-year-old girl and took her to the second floor into the bathroom, and he raped her while she was crying and screaming. And we could hear it all. But what could we do?
Hadia said she and the other women and girls tried to make themselves as unappealing as possible to stop the rapes.
We did not wash, and we pretended to be insane so that ISIS would not rape us, because otherwise they simply took us to do so as they liked.
This girl was just 12 when she was used as a sex slave. She told us how another young girl killed herself after being raped. The Yazidis here in Germany saw horrific things done to their family members and friends by Muslims in the Middle East. Now they're watching as Muslim refugees are coming to Germany, invited by the government, and some are afraid again. Because ISIS has come to Europe, German police know that the Islamic State planted jihadists among the refugees flowing into Germany, and that an attack could be imminent. Now these Yazidis must face it all again. Radical Salafist Muslims on the streets of Germany, marked by their distinctive beards.
When I see men with beards, I get very scared and start crying. I remember how they look and what they did to me.
When I see someone with a beard, even if he is not from ISIS, I get paralyzed. I cannot walk, not scream or anything. I cannot even look at him.
These Yazidis are cared for in Germany by Sister Hatuna, who has been rescuing victims of persecution for 26 years. They call her their mother.
Many of them, they cannot sleep because the night is too long for them. Let everything come back. They're suffering. And even here in Europe or in Germany, if they see covered people, if they see some people with a beard, which one they shave the mustache, they mean they're ISIS, Salafists, and they are afraid more than that.
Aida's children saw people decapitated and are afraid of beards and knives. Several of our interviews ended in tears.
I feel with them, you know. They are all my sisters. What is happening with them is like happened with me too. I hear thousands like these stories. Not 1, 2, 3, 4.
One girl, 14 years, in only the 2 first months, she was 280 times raped.
Sister Hatuna's personal experience as a victim of Muslim persecution has made her very politically incorrect on the Muslim issue.
Islam is a religion of persecution. Don't open the door for the killer. You know who are the killer. Why you let them in your country to kill tomorrow your children?
Hans Erling Jensen, international director of the Hatuna Foundation, says the UN only cares for about 10% of the refugees in the Middle East, and Sister Hatuna can only help as she is funded.
All other, the 90%, that is 3 to 4 million or maybe more, and they are living outside and trying to take care of themselves.
They were forgotten by the world and left to the wolves in the Middle East. Now Angela Merkel has brought the wolves to Germany, and they feel forgotten again.
Psychologically, we will not recover for the rest of our lives. I can't get rid of the fear and pain from what I went through.
We sleep with our eyes closed, but our ears still hear the voices and the cry of our sisters and mothers who were raped. They cry for help, but we cannot do anything to save them, and no one helps them or us.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, reporting from Stuttgart, Germany.
And still to come on CBN NewsWatch, many people are carrying a secret, one that could kill them, learning how to recognize the warning signs of an eating disorder. We've got that story when we come back. Millions of Americans are living with and hiding eating disorders that threaten their physical and mental health. Doctors estimate nearly 5% of teenage girls suffer from this problem, and their families often have no idea. Lori Johnson shows us what's at stake and how some people are breaking free.
For 15 years, McCall Dempsey appeared to be the picture of success, but she was hiding a dangerous eating disorder.
All the while, nobody knew that behind closed doors, I was really killing myself to try to find some comfort in finding perfection and shrinking my body into trying to be this perfect size.
Eating disorders are things like starving yourself, making yourself vomit after eating, abusing laxatives, and over-exercising.
Dempsey did all of that and became addicted to diet pills.
I'll never forget the nights where I would lay on the floor just in cold sweats, and I remember looking in the mirror and I was just gray.
She finally decided she needed help and checked into Carolina House, a center for treating her illness. Executive Director Tammy Holcomb says among psychiatric illnesses, eating disorders are the most fatal.
We see a lot of young people, even as young as 14 or 16, who have heart attacks and serious heart problems where they have to have pacemakers put in.
These disorders can also lead to kidney and liver problems, hair loss, insomnia, and much more.
We're going to see a lot of problems with throat and with esophagus and with teeth. And that's because they bring acid back up into their mouth that causes damage to the teeth. Matter of fact, one of the first people to recognize bulimia is a dentist.
In addition to tooth damage, there are other warning signs, such as a preoccupation with weight.
Your whole world is consumed by food and body. It is all you can think of, and that's not living.
Other signals to watch for: going to the bathroom immediately after eating, large amounts of food missing, and excuses not to eat.
I would always go to dinner with my friends, but I would always tell my friends that I already ate, and I would tell my family that I ate with my friends.
Even though patients attempt to hide the problem, it's often family and friends who first recognize and recommend the need for treatment. Most people stay here about a month and a half. Residents are closely monitored to make sure they eat enough and help them keep it down.
When someone has been purging and vomiting up their food for a period of time, it's very hard to sit with food in their stomach. It's actually painful.
After the body heals, patients must recognize the root cause of their problem.
What the eating disorder often is for a lot of people is a way to have some control in their life because of other situations, be it life changes, family events, things like that. They feel like they lose control. So this feels like they can gain some sense of control by controlling what they eat, controlling what they don't eat.
Mental health professionals stay available around the clock to help patients learn appropriate ways to cope with life.
I don't have to be perfect anymore. So many people are going undiagnosed and untreated, and no one deserves to live a life like that.
Residents need to master new skills before they're ready to leave.
To them, it feels like I'm taking control away from them because I'm going to tell them, okay, this is what you need to eat. These are the portions you need to be eating. And they feel like, oh my gosh, you're taking my control. It's the only thing I have. So we're empowering them. I like to think of it like empowering them to learn what their body needs, learn the choices that they need to be making, and learning to really just take that back for themselves.
Most of all, they learn how to stop obsessing about food.
It was like I found a whole new me, and now I live every day in that awesome place.
Like many other mental conditions, people with eating disorders face the risk of relapse. The key here is learning to recognize those dangerous behaviors and hopefully correct them before losing control. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Knowledge is indeed key. Stay with us. There's more of CBN NewsWatch coming up. It is time now to pass along your Tuesday Tweetable. It's a message to uplift you and for you to post, tag, tweet, and share with others. Love is not only an action, it is also a choice. Choose love every day and leave no room for fear, doubt, or worry. Remember, love is God's greatest gift, and while walking in it is not always easy, it is always His perfect will for your life. Walk in love today and make this a terrific Tuesday. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. We'd love to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do it on Facebook, or you can connect with us at CBN News on Twitter. Hope you join us again right here next time. Once again, make this a terrific Tuesday. We'll see you right back here come tomorrow.